What's up, everybody? It is Thursday night. We got some football around the corner. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, courtesy of CincyJungle.com and its podcast channel, all part of the SB Nation network of shows and podcasts. I am Anthony Cosenza. He is John Sheeran, my co-host. John, we've got a special guest. He stepped up big time last minute here, so I always love that, but we're going to bring him on in just a second. But a huge game this Sunday for both teams.
For both teams as well. When you're trying to go 1-0 every week, which has, I think, been said many a time by Bengals coaches and players this week. I guess every week is huge. But yeah, going down 0-2, specifically in the division, not the ideal start that you want to have. So every week is 1-0, right? Might as well.
Yeah, to quote the immortal Mike Singletary, can't do it. Won't do it, right? Wasn't that his little
shout out Vernon Davis for being a menace.
Vernon Davis, yeah. And his brother who was it? Did you say it was John Ross that made Vontae Davis quit mid game? Was when he was Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Wow. The Davis brothers, they are characters. They were good football players, though. Good football players in their day. Anyway, we're going off the rails already, just about not even 2.5 minutes in. We're going off the rails. I want to remind everybody to get this show on your favorite audio streamer, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones. We are there. If you like the video stuff that we do live, you can catch it on our YouTube channel. There is a show icon underneath John Sheeran there, and underneath that Cincy Jungle icon. Click that to subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. Give us a thumbs up if you like what we're doing on that channel. And then, of course, you can also catch the streams on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. Got to smash that thumbs up on that one with about 80,000 others liking that page. And then, of course, we do stream to Twitter only on the Cincy Jungle account. The others we don't stream to anymore. So you got to come to our YouTube page or the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. All right. All that being said, let's bring in our special guest. He is one of the hosts, along with former Ravens tight end Daniel Wilcox of the BLEAV in Ravens podcast. We have this really cool relationship, John. I know you do a show with the puppets on the BLEAV network, and we've kind of created this awesome relationship with that network of podcasts. They bring us a lot of great guests, a lot of great hosts. We had Mark Bergen on last week to talk about the Steelers. A little more relevant this week with Khari Thompson, co-host of BLEAV in Ravens, because the Bengals didn't play the Steelers last week. We just wanted to preview them. We were behind, and so now we've got a true preview with the Baltimore Ravens. Khari, how you doing, bud?
Doing wonderfully. And, I just want to say the best shows are the ones where you do go just completely off the rails immediately. I actually taped an episode with Solomon Wilcots earlier today, just before this, and it started off as like, oh yeah, we're going to do a preview. And then we were just like talking about like how the practice habits have changed and how nobody playing in the preseason, messes with your flow in week one. And we're just going all over the place. That's the good stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is the good stuff. We've had Mr. Wilcots on a couple times. He is a great guy and does great work for you guys. And for good plug. We'll plug your show, by the way, in just a little bit. Again, the BLEAV in Ravens podcast. You'll probably want to catch that episode coming up here down the pike. Now that Solomon was on your show, but Khari, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. When you joined BLEAV and how you got going in the podcast game.
Well, I joined BLEAV earlier this year, so I had been a reporter covering the New England Patriots actually for the last 2 years. and then I changed jobs and I wanted to stay in the NFL game. And the Ravens are a team that I love and I followed for years, like 20 years or whatever it is. So when they offered, they're like, hey, we got this Ravens podcast. We really need somebody for it. I was like, oh, really? And so I went ahead and jumped on that. And Wilcox, that's my guy right there. And I mean, he's got some things going on right now. Obviously, thoughts, prayers, all the good vibes, go out to him right now and his family. But I mean, I just love talking ball with that guy. And he really indulges me because there's this part, right, where like, I didn't make it terribly far in my football career, but it's something I'm really passionate about. I study up on a lot, but there's this guy who just knows so much, and has been part of it. And he's been part of it, kind of on that level of he was fighting for a job every single time he was on the field. And I think it's important to bring that perspective to fans that so often we think of the stars and we don't always consider just how tough life can be for the 53rd guy on the roster, like the 45th, the third guy. I feel like we have those kinds of conversations a lot. As far as, history wise, I mean, I, been a, sports writer, NFL guy for a long time, starting back in even 2012. I was working at the South Bend Tribune, with a bunch of guys doing the Notre Dame beat back then. And I think I've probably been in the podcast game now for just a couple of years, but I've been a radio guy for a long time. I actually work in public radio right now. So it's always been part of the game for me.
Nice. Well, happy to have you with us. We spoke last year, I believe it was maybe even before the playoff game, with your co-host Daniel Wilcox. That was an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure this is going to be fantastic as well. So appreciate you joining us. We're just going to kind of pepper you with if you got questions for us, by the way, you're always welcome to ask us. But if we're going to kind of pepper you with questions because you are the Ravens expert here, and really, I'm going to start off basic with you, man. What's going on with the injuries? I mean, this is a team that had a big win last week and an unexpected one at home against a rebuilding Texans team, but really suffered. They had some guys that were already out for the game, but really suffered more injuries in this one. So can you kind of tell us what to expect, who may or may not suit up as we are sitting here late on Thursday this week? A lot of star guys on the men for the Baltimore Ravens.
It's ugly. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we knew Mark Andrews was probably a week or so away. I mean, he's back at practice, so that's a sign that he might suit up. And honestly, he might be the only Raven on the injury report that might. I mean, he's been limited in participation. Everybody else, Marlon Humphrey, we know he was probably going to be out for a couple of games, but it didn't seem like he was going to be out terribly long. Like they haven't even put him on injured reserve as far as I know. And then Tyler Linderbaum, the center, and Ronnie Stanley, the left tackle. That's tough because the Ravens struggled a little bit against that Texans front last week. Rookie Will Anderson was getting some pressure on Lamar Jackson. I mean, it was a struggle to get things going offensively up front, and it is not going to help. The other thing that doesn't help is that on the depth chart, Patrick McCarry, he's the backup at center and at left tackle. So he can only play one of those positions at once. So the question then becomes, who takes the next part? I think one guy to maybe watch out for is Ben Cleveland. He's a veteran interior offensive lineman. It's possible maybe you see him at center, and then maybe McCarry steps out to the left side, or maybe Morgan Moses at right tackle. Maybe he slides over to the left side, and then you play Daniel Falale on the right because he's kind of mainly on the right tackle side of things. But whatever outcomes you're looking at, not great. And then you also have Marcus Williams, who's going to miss some time, one of their starting safeties. This was really shaping up to be one of the better secondaries in the league. And they're still fine, but those injuries really detract from their strength.
It's so funny to me to hear veteran Ben Cleveland, considering it feels like yesterday we did a draft profile on him. And I guess he's been his third year in the league. But Kyrie, this AFC North right now, like obviously the Bengals have won the past 2 years, but I feel like right now things are just kind of stuck with these same trends and narratives. The Bengals can't do anything in Cleveland, and it seems like Baltimore, it's illegal for them to come to Cincinnati with a fully healthy roster. It doesn't matter if it's in December, right, when injuries just pile up over a season. But week 2, right, we're talking about the same depleted Baltimore Ravens roster, despite a new training staff, new strength coach and everything like that. Like, it's just like, how do you get past that? Is it just random football stuff, or is this just a systemic problem with that organization?
I mean, I think that particularly when you look at Linderbaum and you look at Ronnie Stanley, I mean, those are just in-game injuries. Those things happen. I mean, it's football, bad luck, especially offensive linemen. You get rolled up on all the time. The Marcus Williams injury, a pec injury. Look, sometimes that stuff happens in the game. Sometimes, but that also could be workout related. So you kind of want to look at that, because I feel like if you're tearing your pec, then that feels like something that might be training related. But I mean, Mark Andrews with a quad and Marlon Humphrey with a foot. I mean, sometimes you just have bad luck. And for whatever reason, it bites the Ravens, particularly hard. I mean, maybe that is something you look at with the training staff. One guy that we haven't talked about, though, that has been part of this injury issue with, playing the Bengals the last couple of years is Lamar Jackson, right? Last couple of times you played the Ravens, he hasn't been there. He hasn't been in the lineup. It was like, Anthony Brown Sr. starting in week 18. Like, let's go ahead and just trot this guy out there, whatever. And then in the playoff game, it was Tyler Huntley. And so you haven't seen a whole lot of Lamar Jackson playing against the Bengals. And that's an interesting part of this, because he's 6-1 against the Bengals in his career and generally plays them pretty decently. The completion percentage isn't necessarily all that good, but the production, when you look at it overall, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in his career, and then all the rushing and all the running that he does. I mean, he's a very dynamic player. So it will be interesting to finally see Lamar Jackson with, by the way, a revamped receiving core go up against this team. But again, we mentioned the offensive line issues, right? He was under a decent amount of pressure. And one of the picks that he threw the pick he threw last week was bad. I mean, that was just an ugly throw against pressure, throws it off his back foot to a guy who was completely covered. And if you're going to have more stuff like that, where the Bengals are bringing pressure against you, or they're just getting home with 4 because they don't need to, because you're playing 2 backups on the offensive line, that could really change how this game looks.
Talking with Khari Thompson, one of the hosts of the BLEAV in Ravens podcast. Happy to be joined by him talking about the week 2 matchup. You mentioned, obviously, we're talking about Lamar Jackson. What do you expect from him this week if there is no Mark Andrews, no Ronnie Stanley, no J.K. Dobbins? Is it going to have to be a little bit of Lamar hero ball from both facets, throwing and running, or are they going to kind of keep leaning a little bit more? Up comes Gus Edwards, and maybe Zay Flowers takes a bigger role, like you mentioned this week. I mean, what do you kind of see the mindset being on offense for the Ravens this week?
You're definitely going to see, I think, some of that triumvirate of running backs, where you've got Justice Hill and Gus Edwards taking on bigger roles. You'll probably see a little bit of Melvin Gordon this week. He had a couple of touches. He signed, later on in the preseason. And then he's, signs to the practice squad after he gets released. So I would have to think he's going to, be on the 53, call up, or whatever it happens to be, for this game. And then one guy that we haven't talked about, I mean, it would be different if he was around, is Keaton Mitchell, the undrafted rookie. He was looking really good in the preseason. But obviously you don't have him because he's on injured reserve. I do think that you'll probably see some receivers running the football. That was something actually that the Ravens did a little bit of a couple of years ago, where they had Devin Duvernay lining up in the backfield and getting him the ball in a variety of different ways. You might see something like that again. And one thing to note about Lamar Jackson in week 1, did not have a single designed run. I think that's going to have to be different this time. You don't want him running the ball a lot because you just paid him a boatload of money. You want to keep him healthy, though we should know he doesn't usually get hurt when he's running the football, especially for design runs. His injuries tend to be fluke injuries in the pocket. But I feel like for this offense to work, unfortunately, they are going to have to use Lamar Jackson's legs, because right now, just for all the precautions they've tried to take, they got depleted right off the bat.
It's the biggest story to me, because this is the second year in a row that the Ravens have a new coordinator running things. Last year was Mike McDaniel. This year it's Todd Monken. Big fan of Todd Monken personally. I thought he should have been an NFL offense coordinator a couple years ago. He didn't have to go down to college. But yeah, I mean, that offense, naturally it's going to change. And I'm just curious, where it is right now compared to obviously what it was, under, God, his name's escaping me right now. But the Ravens offense hasn't, Greg Roman, hasn't changed in years. Now you have this vertical, passing offensive coordinator in there. Like how much different was it right off the bat against Houston? And do you expect it to continue to evolve under Monken's image, I guess?
Well, Robert Mays of The Athletic had a nice little stat that he put out earlier today, where the Ravens used 3 receivers last week, last Sunday, 40 times in this game. They used it like 152 times all last season. So you're almost already a third there. I mean, again, it's a lot last year, especially with Greg Roman. His offenses are very tight end based. So you saw a ton of Mark Andrews. You saw a ton of Isaiah Likely out there. Right now, you've got the horses to actually put receivers on the field. Zay Flowers was the best offensive player on the Ravens last week. I mean, feel like bar none. And you have Odell Beckham Jr., whom I think even at 80% of what he was in his prime is still a very solid receiver. And then you've got a stable of guys that you can start playing behind them. Rashad Bateman, who now doesn't have to be a number 1. He can be a number 2 or 3. I think he's looking like number 3 the way Zay Flowers is looking. And then we haven't even touched on Devin Duvernay. So I feel like this is starting to play into, you have strength at the position now to spread things out. And I think what you're going to see now is a lot more spread it out a little bit. Let Lamar Jackson get the ball out of his hands quickly. You saw some of those smoke screens to Zay Flowers. Just block it up, sling it on the outside, and let a guy go run, create yards after the catch. Seeing a little bit more in the quick game. Let Lamar read it out quickly because you only got 5-man protection. Get it out of your hands as fast as you can. I think that with the Greg Roman offense, it was a lot more heavy up front, more runs, a lot of play action and throwing to your tight ends, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be a little bit more of a basketball on grass kind of offense. And I think they finally have some of the horses to get that done.
Kyrie, well, first of all, it surprises me to hear that Isaiah Likely was out there that much because I think he only had a 1 catch for about 4 yards or something last week. So it's a little surprising to see him out there that often. And then I don't know if people remember this, but Monken was a guy that interviewed for the vacant head coaching job for the Bengals in 2019. So he's a guy whose name should be somewhat familiar with the Bengals. I want to go on the other side of the ball for a minute here. The defense, 5 sacks on CJ Stroud, and really and it came from a lot of different players, a lot of different positions. It appeared. So I guess your take on it, is this fool's gold because it's a rookie quarterback in his first start and it is a rebuilding Houston Texans team, or is this a sign of, man, we're finding different ways to get after the quarterback? The Ravens have always been pretty good at that. There may be some ebbs and flows to that last year, but is this a sign of we're hitting the ground running, or a little bit of fool's gold based on who they played last week?
I think it's the jury's out. And with Isaiah Likely, I meant that he was out there a lot last year, not necessarily in this one. But I think
my bad.
No, it's all good. But I think the jury's out a little bit, and here's why. The Ravens fans and Ravens media have been really fretting about where the pass rush is coming from. And with the Texans offensive line, I'm not sure that we got a really good answer to that because they had injuries as well, right? Titus Howard, their right tackle, just got hurt before the game. He's out. And so then you get to pick on, Laramie, Tunsil, obviously a really good player, but he committed some penalties, had some issues, and then you can attack other places. Now, here's where I think that there was some positive growth here. I mean, Odafe Owe, he was their leading pressure guy last year. He had a lot of pressures in this game. I think he had like 9 pressures in this one. And then you had the combination of Jadeveon Clowney, whom I mean, that's a good depth signing, but I wasn't necessarily looking for a ton of pass rushing production from him right off the bat because he's a much better run defender than he is a pass rusher. But he had 5 pressures in this game. And then Justin Madubuike, who's a backup, like rotational edge guy, he had 4 pressures. And so you're looking at that saying, okay, there we go. We got a couple of things going on in this game. We're able to get after the quarterback. And they need to see that because I feel like the edges in particular, where you're getting the pass rush from on the outside, that could be a potential weakness for this team. They can cover that up to an extent by using their linebackers. And you saw that early in the game. Patrick Queen came on a blitz, took down CJ Stroud. Roquan Smith came in, knocked down a pass, and he got a sack, himself. They have 2 of the best blitzing linebackers in the league. And I feel like that's something that they're going to have to leverage, especially if the front isn't getting home on its own. The danger with that becomes, especially against a team like the Bengals, that they've got so many weapons on the outside that can beat you. Do you want to leave them one-on-one all the time, especially when you've had injuries to your secondary? Again, don't have Marcus Williams out there. Don't have Marlon Humphrey out there. And so, okay, are we going to leave Jamar Chase on an island with like Rocky Sin or, Jalen Armour Davis? Like, do we want to do that? Or, if we put our best guy that we've got available on Jamar Chase, who's on T. Higgins. So you got to be selective about how you do that. And I think that especially on second downs, maybe it seems like a bit more of a running down. The Bengals pass a lot, so we'll see how that goes. You want to try and disguise that as best you can to avoid getting picked apart. So I think it's going to be really telling. Can this front get after the Bengals with just 4? Because if they can't, then it's going to get dangerous.
So I don't mean to make you answer like the same question twice. I just think that with Joe Burrow right now and the fact that he clearly didn't look 100% in Cleveland, misty rain, whatever, but like his calf is still something that he's working through. He talked about that this week with reporters. I'm sure the Ravens have heard that. I'm sure they saw it on film. And last year in 3 games, like the Ravens don't normally blitz that much. And that was something that they didn't do in week 18 or in the playoff game. And they just relied on dropping 7, kind of confusing Burrow in the post-snap phase. Do you foresee, or have you sensed that this week when talking to reporters or talking to coaches and what they have said, is that maybe going to change just because of the current state of what Burrow's going through right now?
It's interesting to bring that up because I think that the way defenses have been playing these really good quarterbacks with really dynamic weapons more often than not is, too deep. You want to go ahead and beat us underneath. We'll come up and tackle you. Gotta earn these drives. And I think that probably by and large, that might be what the Ravens do. But again, it all depends. And like I said, if you blitz, then you leave yourself open to the weapons the Bengals have. And then that can start getting to be like stealing. If you're just going to leave your guys one-on-one with one of the best receivers in the league, or, a couple of the best receivers in the league. And so I think that zone has got to be probably the first thing they're going to want to do is drop 7 and then try to get home with that. And then just try to confuse Burrow, move guys around, take away certain things. But if that's not working, then you've got to reevaluate that. I think, again, the first thing they're going to try to do is see if you can get home with 4. And the key is you can still get Joe Burrow off his spot and get him moving with just 4. Now, that means though that you're not necessarily just, okay, everybody just go straight and push the pocket. You might see some games. You might see some creative things in order to free up one-on-one matchups and especially get pressure in Joe Burrow's face. We talk a lot about the edges, right? Who's coming off the edges? Those are the big money guys who are paid to get the quarterback. But if you're the key with guys like Joe Burrow, who are your pocket passers first and foremost, get pressure in their face, make them move, make them slide around. And if Burrow's leg is an issue, that's the first thing you want to try to do. Blitzing is something that you do as a last resort, or it's like, hey, this is an advantageous situation. I think we got him here. We can force him into a turnover. So I think the Ravens are going to try to stick to the game plan that they've had success with first. Then we'll see how tricky they need to get or want to get.
Well, that's you said a lot of interesting and some things that they want to key on defense and what the Bengals might want to do to potentially counter some of the things that Baltimore shows them. Right now, DraftKings has this game at Bengals is 3.5 point favorites. We talked about some of the injuries. You talked about some keys on the defense, maybe a couple of other keys and or matchups that you are watching. And then how do you kind of see this one playing out this week? It's a hard one to predict, in my opinion.
It is a very hard one to predict. I think that the Bengals are going to come out ready to prove that last week was a fluke. And one thing that, I've been turning over in my mind a lot with quarterbacks and offenses in week 1 is that there's probably a little bit of rust there, especially for Joe Burrow. Didn't play in the preseason, didn't do much in the preseason. And so when you're thrown in during live action, obviously you trust the guy because you just paid him, you made him the highest paid player in NFL history to go out there and do his thing. But the live bullets are flying now. And so that takes a little bit of acclimation. I think they're going to try to prove that was an aberration. We're at home. It's week 2. We do not want to go down 0-2 in the schedule. I think that you probably give the advantage to the Bengals in this one, especially when you're talking about the injuries to the Ravens offensive line, what that could do to Lamar Jackson. At the same time, got to, say again, Lamar Jackson doesn't lose to the Bengals very often. And I think that he could be equally motivated on the other side of things like, hey, you know what? The outcome would have been different if I'd been playing the last couple of times. Now I'm going to show you what me and my new receiving core, my new toys with this little Zay Flowers guy can do out here. I think that, again, advantage Bengals for now, but I think that this really could go either way. But that's how I would say it. Advantage Bengals. If I like this.
I assume that you probably believe, pardon the pun, that the Ravens will do you see what I do here? Yeah, this is again off the rails. But I assume you still believe that these are the two teams, or that this division will likely come down to, or did the Browns kind of change your mind on that front a little bit?
I don't know that I believe in that. I feel like they might have just caught the Bengals on a bad week. I feel like I don't trust Deshaun Watson right now. I think that he hasn't played very well he didn't play very well at all last year when he came back. I don't think he played very well in this game. They had to rely on, his legs and kind of other things. And to their credit, they did that. But I think that until I can trust Deshaun Watson, I'm just not buying them right now. I mean, I love Nick Chubb. I love the running game that they have. Myles Garrett is obviously an absolute beast. He's a monstrosity. But I mean, they built that team and an offense in a lot of ways. I mean, yeah, they've got Nick Chubb, but they brought Deshaun Watson there to be the missing piece, and he is not looking like a missing piece right now. I think that from my money, it's the Bengals and the Ravens, and the Browns are in the mix. The Steelers, no, they look bad.
Yeah. Well, you came in here and you gave the edge to the Bengals. And as Lindsay in our live Facebook chat said, please ask him about his orange shirt. He wore the orange shirt for the occasion. We love him for it. Kyrie, I'm going to pull up your website, put the website in our live chats and stuff. Tell us about the show, where you can find it, and how we can leave you a rating and spread the word.
I appreciate that, man. Well, we are the Believe in Ravens podcast. I'm Khari Thompson. I'm one of the hosts. Daniel Wilcox, former Ravens tight end, is the other host. We do this a couple of times a week. We love having people from other teams on to talk our game. You can find us on the Believe website. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So go check us out, subscribe, download, do the thing.
Appreciate it, Kyrie. This has been awesome, man. Give our best to Daniel. Hopefully we can maybe have both you guys on down the road for the rematch. It'd be cool to kind of have a little roundtable thing, but hope you enjoy your weekend. We appreciate your objectivity in giving the Bengals the edge in this one. I like that, my friend, but don't be a stranger. Let's get you back on here sometime soon.
Absolutely. See you later.
All right. Take care. That was Khari Thompson, co-host of the Believe in Ravens podcast. That was awesome. They do a great job with their on-air talent, John, including yourself, my friend. But they do a great job finding knowledgeable people, and then they grab other. A lot of the shows have a lot of other former players of that specific team, so it's a cool dynamic that you get on those shows. Almost as cool as what we do here, but.
That is a top tier Ravens podcast, because I remember our conversation with Mr. Wilcox and how extensive and insightful it was beyond my imagination. And Kyrie is extremely knowledgeable as well. So that's a great show.
Yeah, and it was really neat to when we spoke with Daniel, because we were talking about the game, of course, but there's so many Ravens locker rooms, because he played with a lot of the big time characters on the Ravens team, and then he also. I believe his paths crossed in Baltimore with Marvin Lewis too. So there was a lot of different, there's a lot of different dynamics there that were fun to talk about aside from the current games going on there. But go check out their show, if not at least for this week, because they do have Solomon Wilcots on the show talking about that. So that was a lot of fun with Khari Thompson. Well, we are going to start talking about our thoughts on the game here. And you got the peek over the other side of the fence with Kyrie, and we're going to talk about things here. John, there's continued talk this week about Burrow's calf, and he kind of keeps making comments about, alluding to the fact that it is not 100%. I admittedly have not checked. I could look up my phone app, because even in Orange County here, I do have the city of Cincinnati on my weather app, just because I like to keep things, keep an eye on what's going on out there. But I don't believe there's going to be the same kind. I'm looking at it, maybe cloudy, high of 75. Doesn't appear to be rain or any gross stuff that day on Sunday. So I don't know, maybe a little more confidence in trotting around the field and or throwing the football around by number 9 this week.
Well, for starters, if you're trying to project Cincinnati weather, the safest thing to do is
good luck.
Yeah. 5 minutes beforehand, it's probably the best time. I'm looking at right now, it says scattered showers potentially for Sunday, like a 24% chance. So that either means it's going to be completely sunshine and rainbows or a torrential downpour.
Yeah, monsoon.
None in between, obviously. So yeah, I think it's been talked so much about the rain, and I think Burrow expanded upon it a little bit more Wednesday, when he said, surprisingly, it's almost better for it to be raining extremely hard, because it's aggressive and fast, and you can almost dry it off a little bit quicker compared to when it's like a stable mist and the ball is consistently wet. I don't know. I've never played quarterback in the rain, much less dry. So I'll take his word for it. But with the calf, there is a difference. I think most players at this point are not 100%, and Joe Burrow definitely fits under that umbrella. Like at this point, you've suffered minor ailments, injuries. The Bengals have like 7 players on the practice injury report at this point. Everyone's going through something, and I think Burrow is he's probably like at least 85-90% there. I don't think he would be out there if he was anything less. But playing through injuries is just kind of part of playing in the NFL. I think it matters, though, because when you talk about the ability to scramble, to go off script, to get outside of the pocket, to do some of the things that makes Burrow special, that definitely has an impact on it. And whether it's about trusting that calf in order to be able to do it, or just not wanting to push it so that he can recover quicker, and then revolving the game plan around that definitely impacts things. And I think it's even more so when you're talking about facing the Ravens defense. That, again, we talked about this with Kyrie. They normally don't blitz. Like last week against the Ravens, or against the Texans, they blitzed the hell out of CJ Stroud. And that could have just been because he's a rookie quarterback playing on the road for his first career start. But if the Ravens are smart, like, they probably are looking at what Joe Burrow is and thinking, okay, he's not the same agile guy who can survive in a pocket that's only being rushed by 4 guys. Maybe it is best to try to get him off of his spot quicker. Maybe that does require blitzing 1 or 2 guys in there. So it definitely is a factor right now. Even if he is healthy enough to play it, and this is part of the game, it definitely impacts what the Bengals can do offensively.
It will impact things that they can do offensively. I want to transition here to this, John. We talked about this on Monday in the aftermath and a little bit on the post-game show. The Bengals had some semblance of success running the football last week. And obviously with Burrow and all of the issues, the weather, all that kind of stuff, it would have seemed to have made more sense to maybe stick with that at certain points in this game. But this week now you've got a little bit of a different defense. But that being said, might this be the week to get kind of establish that a bit more, not necessarily be a run first team, but they went away from that, even though the game wasn't far out of control until really the fourth quarter there. They went away from that, and might that be a little bit, might they stick with that a little bit more, you think, this week? And might it be more Travion Williams this week for pass protection purposes over the other 2?
Well, for starters, it might have to be Travion Williams, because Chris Evans, we'll get to the injury report. Yeah, he popped up there with a hamstring. He was limited Wednesday, and then he was out Thursday, which typically means that he suffered the injury on Wednesday, and then he couldn't practice Thursday. So that's something to monitor as we go into Friday. The thing is, like, like looking at last year, the Ravens game was the start of the Bengals' official switch to more of a gap scheme running offense, just going downhill and running a lot of duo and inside zone. And Joe Mixon had success in that Week 5 game, but obviously the offense as a whole was not good enough. It was not a good game from Joe Burrow. The other two games later in the season, Week 18 of the wildcard game, Joe Mixon didn't necessarily have a good game. And you can attribute that to injuries to the offensive line. They had a new right tackle in there. Jonah Williams got hurt midway through the wild card game. So you can chalk that up to injuries potentially. But I think this Ravens defense is still pretty difficult to run on. I honestly think that they're just better at stopping the run than just generating a natural pass rush, which is 4. So that's something to take into account. And also just the game script in general. It obviously has, it is the most impactful thing in terms of how much a team ends up running the ball early and often into the game. Typically, when the Bengals play the Ravens have these long drives that it's tough to get them off the field, but the Bengals do a good job of keeping them out of the end zone for the most part. But in that playoff game, I think the Bengals only had 3 possessions in the first half, so they had to make them count. And when you're dealing with that, when those possessions become precious and you're not forcing turnovers, it is tough to kind of like lean on the run game when you do have a healthy stable of pass catchers around Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow's out there and he's good enough to throw the ball. So I think it does depend on how this game kind of starts. If the Ravens start off hot, it might force the Bengals to just throw the ball. But I think they, in their mind, they would still want to be more balanced, I guess, than they were last week. But it does depend on, how the Bengals defense kind of reacts to this new look Ravens offense for sure.
Yeah, let's look at the injury report here, and this is on cincyjungle.com. I will share this page for everybody here. As Kyrie noted, and as we've kind of heard, the Ravens are banged up. We don't need to spend a ton of time on that, but it is kind of interesting how many guys are on that list. There you see Marcus Williams, big name there. Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, Marlon Humphreys. The only one that is seemingly promising to play is Mark Andrews, who is a huge threat and a Bengals killer when he does play. So that's one to definitely note. But as of now, it would appear that Marlon Humphrey, Tyler Linderbaum, Ronnie Stanley, and Marcus Williams, as Kyrie just said, will not be playing this week. We will see. You see Cam Sample, who had with an ankle issue, did not practice Wednesday, limited on Thursday. That is not great news with the Osai situation, who, by the way, was limited both Wednesday and Thursday. Chris Evans, as you noted, was limited on Wednesday and then went the other way, did not practice on Thursday. Not great. Logan Wilson, ankle issue, limited on Wednesday, full on Thursday. He should be good to go. Burrow, of course, the calf is listed, full practice both days. Dax Hill, a hand issue, full practice both days. And then Marcus Bailey landed on it today, Thursday. So at this point, the statuses aren't determined, but Bengals looking pretty healthy. The big question there, Osai and Sample, we're kind of thinking, again, high ankle sprain, although this is progressing in the right direction more quickly than we had maybe anticipated for Osai, getting some more on-field work, rehab work, that sort of thing, limited. Probably still going to play it safe this week with him, I would assume. But interesting situation, John, between Sample and Osai. Right.
You're looking at probably 2 game time decisions here with Andrews and Osai. I would expect Osai to be like, if it's full participation, it's going to be a walkthrough anyways. So it's not like that high intensity of a practice where they're asking him to do that much. And obviously Mark Andrews is probably going to be limited tomorrow too. So it's going to be the news that probably breaks Saturday night, Sunday morning. And with Cam Sample, I think going from not practicing to being limited, he's probably also in that category as well. And this could be a situation where both these guys end up being active and neither one of them plays like their normal amounts of snaps. It seems like if Osai does end up playing, you're not looking at more than like 5 to 10 snaps probably. Well, in a regular normal week, he's probably playing close to 30. So this is looking like Miles Murphy plays a little bit more. He did actually play against the Browns. There were some people who claimed that he didn't have any snaps, but he was actually on the field for that game, and he's probably going to have to be on the field a little bit more often, as is Trey Hendrickson, who had a really good game against the Browns. I think he was 4th in the NFL last week in pass rush win rate, did really well against Jedrick Wells. Now he's got a backup left tackle almost for sure against the Ravens. So that's a matchup that the Ravens have to watch for, and Trey Hendrickson, I think, is going to have to be prepared to play close to 50, 60 snaps in this game.
Yeah, also worth noting that with Evans at the DNP status this week, on Thursday rather, that Charlie Jones was getting more looks at the kickoff return spot and punt return spot. Continued there. Kind of a mixed bag last week. Had one decent return. I think it was 15 or 16 yards, if I'm not mistaken, but also fielded a punt at his own 6 at one point, which was maybe not the best idea. Still, he was electric in college in both of those facets, and he would be the guy you would think that would get the nod as the kickoff guy, and of course remaining the punt return guy should Evans not go. And then, as we were just talking about, John, Williams only had, I think it was 2 carries last week. Evans kind of just had a little bit more of a role last week, but if he is out, and with some of the pass protection issues last week, you would probably think that it would be Travion getting more, cutting into Mixon's cut carries a little bit, but definitely out there for pass pro purposes and kind of all-purpose usage in this offense this week.
Yeah, I think one of those 2 carries he ends up tripping when he could have got some positive yard, which is there's a lot of debate going on right now between grass fields and turf fields. It seems like whenever the Bengals play on grass, there's not like any injuries, but at least one guy trips per game. I just think back to 2021 that I think it was like a fake. What was the play? Fake flea flicker. Jesus, and like Joe Mixon tripped like 5 yards past. So luckily no injuries for the Bengals, but wet grass is typically not the most stable surface to run on. But also, yeah, so I think all 3 running backs last week got pass protection chances, and Chris Evans, I think, showed up on one. But also, it was a week to prove that chip blocking with your running backs is at best a 50-50 proposition, because sometimes you are able to put the edge back inside and help out your tackles, and some other times it ends up actually hurting it, because if the quarterback steps up in the pocket and your running back chips the edge back inside, it just puts them right next to the quarterback, which is how Joe Burrow got sacked for one of his sacks. So it always sounds nice in theory to have an extra blocker in there, but if the communication, the plan between the running back and the tackle is off, it ends up honestly just making it worse. So they have to still be selective with that, especially if you don't know for sure if the Ravens are going to be blitzing a lot in this game.
All right, well, let's get to the matchups to watch. And one of the things that I find to be, especially this week, with the injuries to Dobbins, to Ronnie Stanley, who knows what's going on with Mark Andrews and if he's going to play or not yet this week. I think there's going to be a lot on Lamar. So as Kyrie said, there didn't seem to be a designed run with Lamar last week in the offense. I think that changes this week. So I am fascinated to know what Lou Anarumo is going to do, maybe from a spy standpoint on defense, and what the different things he will do with the secondary this week. If Andrews is back out there, who's going to be the guy kind of tasked with him? Will it be a Mike Hilton, or will he use maybe will Dax Hill slide into the slot? Will it be Tyson Anderson? So there's a lot of different things that he can do. I'm curious to know what that's going to look like. And then, of course, Bengals edge rushers against, if Stanley does not go, against a backup tackle, and how they fare there. Those are some of the obvious ones, but really, really curious to see what Lou Anarumo dials up specifically to key on Lamar Jackson so he does not beat them with his legs this week.
Right. And that, I think just the fact that Watson had like a handful of those runs when Bengals were in man coverage, and that's the danger of playing man coverage when you have those vertical routes. There's just no one over the middle to keep an eye on the quarterback, especially if your defensive line loses contain. And that's something that the Bengals have done a phenomenal job of, regardless of who the quarterback in Baltimore is. They mush rush very consistently against Baltimore's offensive line, which basically means you're not being too aggressive. You're not pushing the quarterback up in the pocket. You're basically doing your best to contain him by not creating any openings or gaps for him to run through. So I think that's going to continue to be the plan. Like, obviously Lamar, if he sees a lane and he sees space, he's arguably the most dangerous quarterback to take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. So there's at least some tape and precedent about how to stop that. I'm really curious as to what the plan is for Zay Flowers, because he looks really good already. He had a phenomenal training camp, preseason last week. Again, I know it's the Texans, but 9 receptions for 78 yards, 54 of them were after the catch. I'm just looking at who ended up covering him on all of those targets. It ended up being 7 different Houston Texans players. I think they use him all over the field in various different formations and personnel groupings. He's probably going to end up being in the slot for the most part. But even still, like this Bengals secondary showed some new things last week. Like you had, I think the first third down, you had the Bengals in dime when you had DJ Turner and Chidobe Awuzie in the slot.
Yep.
You had Dax Hill like out wide, and you had Mike Hilton at safety. So like the Bengals are doing different things as we kind of expected with some new faces in there. Who ends up taking away Zay Flowers, or at least giving them their best to take him away? Because right now he looks really explosive for being 5'10", 180 pounds. He looks really quick. I would be very skeptical if they ask Mike Hilton to run with him for 60 plays a game, because Mike Hilton continues to show signs of maybe slowing down in terms of being able to guard slot receivers in man coverage. I think honestly using him more as like that robber safety in that one personnel package, it might not end up working in his favor, because he's just not that great of an athlete in space. He's great blitzing and defending the run and setting the edge from the slot position. But if you're going to ask Mike Hilton to line up in the slot against Zay Flowers and cover him for like 30, 40 routes in this game, it could end up being ugly. I'm really curious to see what the plan is for that.
So if it's not him, who do you anticipate it being? I mean, who's that first guy in there to do that?
I think this is a game that Dax Hill is made for, to be honest, because now that you have two safeties, I don't know what the trust level is with Jordan Battle at this point, but I think you're going to see Nick Scott play more, post safety or playing in these two deep shells. Like you're going to see him back, and I think you're going to allow Dax Hill to be on the line of scrimmage. He's an incredible athlete that can, mirror guys in man coverage. I think he's probably your best chance at limiting Zay Flowers. Maybe they go in more zone because of how many weapons that the Ravens now have at receiver and how much different this offense is. But Dax Hill is labeled as a safety. He's going to get snaps as a deep safety, but in this particular matchup, I think he trusted him more to line up with Zay Flowers in some of those crucial downs.
That was the guy at the top of my mind. There are other options as well, but he is a guy that fits the bill, and he had a really nice starting debut this week, or last week rather, against the Browns with that interception off of the Zachary Carter tip. So sky's the limits there. But yeah, that's obviously how the Bengals match up against the Baltimore wide receivers. That is something that I'm interested in. And then, of course, what they do then, if they do trot out, if Andrews is back, you trot out Isaiah Likely, and then you maybe, if they kind of split things out wide, DJ Turner's going to have to be a factor. There's a lot of different players and ideas that they could use out there. So this is going to be a little trickier. Like you said, the offense for the Ravens is different. What they're wanting to do this year as opposed to last year is different because of the weapons they have at wide receiver that they maybe didn't have the last couple of years. So a lot of different things to watch. And then, of course, we mentioned Sample and Osai in that situation. Who's going to take the field? Who's not? Are both of them going to not take the field? And then is it more Miles Murphy time? And what does he do this week? So there's a lot of moving parts and situations where some different players could come in and do some different things, particularly on defense.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's a great week to not have your full stable of pass rushers healthy, but again, I think rushing Lamar Jackson is different than rushing other quarterbacks, because you don't want him leaving the pocket and running for 20 yards, especially when you're in man coverage, which, the Bengals will still do that a healthy amount. So obviously focus on containing him, whether that's with like a spy or a linebacker, but also with your pass rushers. Like if you're able to get a free lane, a free shot on Lamar Jackson, obviously take it, but it's just different. And I think Sam Hubbard, these are usually the games where he steps up. Obviously the fumble in the jungle was almost an aberration, right? But in general, like the stuff that you expect to see from Sam Hubbard, like he does it particularly well against the Ravens. He's going to go up against Morgan Moses at right tackle. Obviously, Kevin Zeitler playing the Bengals again. That's always something to watch for. So, but no Linderbaum, no Ronnie Stanley. Definitely, I think, changes how much they can do in the run game. I think when they're handing the ball off to their running backs, who, again, J.K. Dobbins won't be out there. The Bengals defense has a lot of experience defending this Ravens offense, just like the Ravens defense has a lot of experience defending the Bengals offense. And this is why in these games, I think Kyrie was kind of leaning towards, where I'm thinking, right? This is going to be a definite, the Bengals are definitely motivated to get everything right in this game, but it's just really hard to do that when, the opponent knows you so well and can match up with you so well.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth with Sam Hubbard. I mean, playing that kind of contained type of defense off the edge. I mean, this is where these are two of his most solid. I don't want to jinx the guy now, but these are usually two of his more solid games of the year on the schedule here. So when you look at the games, let's see, the games last year, 17 points scored by the Ravens. Again, no Lamar Jackson in that one for the wild card round. 16 points scored for them in the final week of the season. Again, no Lamar Jackson in that one. And then 19 points scored at home against the Bengals. I think that was it. Was that the Thursday? No, not the Thursday nighter. That was like a Sunday nighter against the Bengals, 19-17. So, I mean, usually in this new iteration of the Bengals, as they got out of the growing pains of 2019, 2020, while they haven't won a lot of the games, they have had success more recently, and they've limited the points, and it's been a lot of Justin Tucker. That's kind of the bottom line here. So that being said, John, let's talk about, we'll get out of here. Let's do some predictions. What do you think happens in this one? I'm going to tell you, aside from Kyrie, I'm doing a 5 questions with the enemy for Cincy Jungle, and the optimism level in terms of the outcome of this game from that contributor, Kyle Barber over at Baltimore Beatdown, was pretty similar to what we heard from Kyrie this week.
I think the over under right now is like 46, or I think it's 46, 48. I still think it's probably under. I think you're looking at in that 20 to 19 point range for both teams, because again, I think the Bengals offense is going to look better. They're going to find the end zone this week, right? If they don't, then all hell's going to be had. All hell's going to be had in Cincinnati if they don't find the end zone this week. Bengals offense is going to look better. How much better? I don't know, because that Ravens defensive line is still really good. Owe, even Clowney for being like the third edge, he's still good enough, right? Matabuke, their guys inside, Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, 2 really good linebackers, right? It's tough to generate explosive plays against that team. The fact that they're dealing with injuries in the secondary, I think, provides hope that, hey, if they see one-on-one on the outside with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, maybe you can connect one time, right? Because you're not going up against Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson. So how well the Bengals offensive line holds up against the Ravens pass rush. I mean, we talk about it every week, right? Like that, the Bengals offensive line holding up. I think they're going to hold up a little bit better than what they did against Cleveland. I think they're going to be able to find more opportunities down the field in one-on-one matchups. If the Ravens do end up giving them, the Ravens could end up just playing, not prevent, but playing more soft coverage because they don't trust their cornerbacks. But if that's the case, then you're looking at a quick game with Joe Burrow looking a little bit better because he can actually get the ball out of his hands. So I'm thinking the Bengals score. I'm thinking the Bengals score 20 and the Ravens score 17. I'm going to go 2017.
2017. That is a fair assessment. I don't want to. I don't want to pick the result like the put him in a blender game from 2021. The Jamar Chase put him in a blender game. But I think this has the makings of a comfortable Bengals win. I think they are. Now Lamar's going to be Lamar and Justin Tucker. They're going to put up some points, but I think quite often we've seen this date back. It's been a lot of defense. It's been a lot of field goals, and then the occasional 1 or 2 touchdowns in the end zone for the most part. And this dates back to who was that quarterback from Cal that they had same class as Carson Palmer, Kyle. I can't remember his last name, but it dates back to him. It dates back to Joe Flacco and now Lamar Jackson. Now this offense has potency. This offense has the ability to put up a lot of points, but in this particular game, like I said, recent history, be it just last year or the last couple of years, the Ravens have had a little bit of trouble kind of cracking that 20, 24 point threshold, 2019, 2020 notwithstanding. So I think that this could be like a 24-16 game for the Bengals. I think this could be a, 27-20 type of situation for the Bengals. Not necessarily a blowout, but just with the attrition, the injury problems that the Ravens have, I think this could be a nice bounce back win. I don't think the Bengals will lose 2 in a row. I don't really see it. And we know there's only one way to go, but up from last week. So I see a positive outcome on this one.
It is tough to not think back to this time last year when the Bengals just lost to the Steelers.
It is.
They're playing at Dallas against Cooper Rush.
Yep.
And we all knew that Michael Parsons was good. We didn't know how good he actually was until he just completely destroyed the Bengals game plan. But we saw in that game, the Bengals tried to do different things offensively. They tried to go under center to throw the ball, but they still ran into issues that plagued them. And they finally managed to score towards the end of the game, and it just wasn't enough. I don't foresee the Bengals could lose this game easily. The Ravens are really good. Despite the injuries, I think they're just in a better spot. They just have a better understanding of who they are right now compared to this time last year. And the biggest thing is if Burrow's calf continues to hinder him from being who he needs to be, because him just being the ultimate point guard in games like this, when the defense doesn't give you a ton, and getting the ball out quickly and recognizing and diagnosing things quickly and being able to get things going at the pace that they are. If his current health state and current state in general prevents him from being that, they're going to run into issues. But I'm counting on that not being so much the case this week. Let's pray it's dry.
Yeah. Billy Turner in the live Facebook page says Dobbins is out, a big loss for this game. Here's the thing with this. It's not so much the Ravens really embody the next man up thing, and they do a very good job of bouncing back from injuries, maintaining competitiveness, maintaining playoff appearances and deep runs through injuries. That's been one of their, and it's a testament to how they're run, one of the better run teams in all of the NFL for sure. But this comment here, why I point this one out is, they'll find a way to still get yards with Gus Edwards and Lamar and Justice Hill. And they'll still find ways. It's more for me, the transitional week for them as they lose these players, as opposed to just losing the players in general. It's the fact that they have to go through that growing pain this week in particular, as opposed to, 3 weeks down the road. Yeah, these guys are gone, but we've had 2-3 weeks of game plans without them.
Yeah, the Ravens, they've been in this situation before, and they're always there at the end, whether they make the playoffs or not, whether they do anything in the playoffs or not. They just know how to get it done, and that hasn't changed. But I still can't believe that the Bengals are playing the Ravens in week 2 in Cincinnati, and they're coming to Cincinnati without a fully healthy roster. It is unbelievable how that just never changes. It's crazy. It
never changes. We're gonna get out of here in just a second with our drop the mic, but we have a little parlay. I don't know if you caught this last week, John, when we did this. This is courtesy of DraftKings, and our Cincy Jungle team has kind of put together a 4-bet slip courtesy of DraftKings. And if you go on there, there's a little parlay, and this is what we feel most comfortable with here. This is a plus 625 parlay over 19.5 points. That would be over that for the Ravens. So 20 or more, potentially putting my score prediction at risk. Under 28.5 for the Bengals. I think that's a reasonable one. 10 plus Joe Burrow rushing yards. I think he's going to scramble out and do more this week than he did last week. And 30 plus yards from Tyler Boyd, alternate receiving yards. That there are your 4 picks courtesy of DraftKings. And throughout all of this season, Cincy Jungle and SB Nation will be cooking up our parlays with DraftKings and put them right here and on the homepage of cincyjungle.com. So loyal fans can go there, go to DraftKings. And if they want to take our advice, it's not a guarantee. It's not a lock. This isn't a betting show, but hey, we feel comfortable with these picks here. So check that out. And of course, as we mentioned with the scores, if you look at over 19.5 and under 28.5, particularly the latter, the Bengals don't score a ton of points against the Ravens, and the Ravens have trouble getting, well into the 20s. So, I think 19.5 is a manageable number there, but check that out. Try these 4 picks if you are so inclined. This might be a good parlay for you this weekend. And of course, if you do have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. Licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible. And of course, bet where sports betting is available to you. So check that out and have some fun with that. I've got to catch my breath after that one, my friendo. So you drop the mic first.
Yeah, we need to get you like that thing that
we need to have a pre-record of that.
Yeah,
we're I gotta auto tune that thing. Yeah,
doesn't sound the same unless it's like hitting at me 100 miles an hour. But thank you for doing that, so I didn't have to. My mic drop can't be anything else than whatever the hell I saw today. Joe Exotic, Tiger King, Joe Maldonado.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh my god.
He wrote a letter to Joe Burrow from prison because he's still there for like 16 more years if he lives that long. I will read an excerpt of this letter. Not all of it, but just the part that I think is relevant. Quote, I see the news magazines as well as yourself calling you the Tiger King. Everyone in the world is exploiting me and my trademarks while I sit innocent in an American federal prison. I've been the Tiger King before you got out of high school. Tiger King is my trademark and intellectual property. And part of the quote. I'll also read another quote from Joe Burrow in an interview last November. Quote, I don't like that one very much, Burrow said of the Tiger King nickname in an interview. I don't like that show because I don't like seeing animals in cages. I don't really like that. And so I didn't see the show, so I don't like that. I guess Joe Exotic thought that Joe Burrow was calling himself the Tiger King, even though that's the one of his 10,000 nicknames that he doesn't like. And he also, Maldonado, he also requested $20,000 from Joe Burrow to help pay for a down payment to hire attorneys to get out of prison, which again, he's been in for the past 3 years for 17 counts of animal cruelty and also conspiring or hiring people to murder Carol Baskin. This is the weirdest article I've ever written in my life, and I feel like people just need to know about it.
Yeah, and quite honestly, he doesn't really, I mean, he kind of likes some of the nicknames. That's not one, as he so blatantly put, that he likes. He likes some of the nicknames, and a lot of them come from fans and all kinds of fun ones that work well for him. But yeah, Tiger King. And quite honestly, that's not, what's funny is that one hasn't been so much on the forefront more recently. That was kind of more like maybe closer to after he was drafted, 2021, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the timing lined up.
Yeah. So, but now we're like, dude, it's almost, maybe he's just hearing about this 2 years later in prison or something. And now he's like, but intellectual property. And then, oh, by the way, can you help me with my lawyer fees? That's just unbelievable all around. And so characteristic of that dude rocking the bleached mullet in prison. So unbelievable. Go for it.
No, I didn't have anything else to say.
Oh, okay. I don't have too much other than that. I think. What do you think about this being a must-win game? There's some dialogue about this, John. Is this it's week 2. I tend to be overdramatic, I guess, in certain facets with this team. I've been hammering this all ever since the schedule came out. You can't go 0-2 to start the year. Basically any other year that doesn't have 2 division games to start the year. I don't think you can go 0-2 here. And can you rebound? Yeah, we saw it last year. But I don't think you can risk that, particularly with 2 division games to start the year.
Yeah, that's the biggest factor here, because then you have to go 4-2 if you want a comfortable shot of winning the division. Getting the 1 seed just becomes a fairy tale at that point. You'd have to just rattle off wins like you did last year. I think the Bengals are the biggest case of proving why going 0-2 is not the end of the world. But at some point, you just want to make the path easier. Maybe this team is addicted to just making the path harder. But yeah, it does require, I think, them going, probably winning the next 4 games or so, which is doable considering who they play. But I always thought that 1-1 was the most likely. It was like 100% like the likely outcome starting against the Browns and the Ravens. It's just really hard to be both those teams back to back, especially considering the Browns' history against them. So I think we all expected them to at least win one of these games. And if that doesn't happen, then you can't start adjusting maybe your expectations for the rest of the season if certain problems continue to arise that are like more alarming than what we saw last week.
Yeah, Lee says not a must win, and I understand that sentiment. I do understand it, but just from my standpoint, I think here's the deal, John. You're talking about last year. What was it? 12-4 because of the canceled Buffalo game. That was that was their record there, and they ended up getting was it the 3 seed last year? So 12-4, 4 losses got him the 3 seed. You're talking about going 0-2. And then you need to go 4-2 in the division. Oh, by the way, you still have, all those division games. You have a Kansas City. You have other daunting games on this schedule. And to even, granted, every year is different. If you're going to use last year as a barometer, you have 4 losses. Let's just say you get there again. You're at the 3 seed again. At some point, this team probably, if they are going to make another postseason run, you got to get one of those top seeds to get more home playoff games. They've played a lot of road playoff games the last 2 years. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse either. I mean, you got to take this week and win this week. But I just see that and I go, man, while they've done it, it's just you can't keep putting yourself behind the 8 ball like that,
Yeah, I think when we look ahead, like, again, we can afford to do that. I think they don't have to do that while also recognizing how big this is just because it's a divisional game. If teams truly do look at it as like a 1 week at a time thing, the Ravens are still probably the teams you compete with for the top of this division, and losing any game to them is going to greatly impact what the division standings are at the end of the year. So I think that's just enough to make this, in their minds, a must-win game, especially with it being at home.
Yeah. Well, let's get out of here. We've gone a little longer than expected, but it's been a fun show, and especially fun that Khari Thompson, host of the BLEAV in Ravens podcast, joined us to help break down the Ravens game. We'll have more coming at you through the weekend and post-game shows, all kinds of different stuff. So we'll have more coming at you, breakdowns, and then, of course, John and I will be back on Monday and Thursday as we usually do, the aftermath, breaking down what happened, and Thursday night previewing the upcoming game. And hopefully you like those, because those are nice tee-ups for football coming those respective nights. So we're going to keep them coming at you. John, thank you, buddy. Should be a fun weekend ahead. Are you going to the game?
I am not, but I'm going to next week's game against the Rams. So that should be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to, we'll have to talk. I mean, I'm still trying. We'll have to talk.
Oh, really?
Anyway, I'm trying. We're going to see. Yeah, we're going to see. But take care, my friend. We'll talk soon.
See you guys.